Jordan Conradson with the Gateway Pundit. I'm here with Mike Davis, the founder of Article 3 Project. He's out there at the Denver courthouse during the lawsuit to take Trump off the ballot, citing the 14th Amendment. So, Mr. Davis, I want to talk about this lawsuit. The Democrats are obviously terrified of Trump, his soaring polling numbers. They've got a radical far-left judge donating to anti-Trump January 6th causes. They've got a sociology professor out there saying that Trump was saying his words with a wink and a nod. It's a bunch of crap. It's a bunch of election interference. What are your key takeaways from the case so far?
Well, I would take away that this case is bogus. It's part of the Democrats' pattern of election interference and lawfare. They impeached Trump twice for non-crime or for nonsense. They indicted him 4 times for non-crimes. They're trying to bankrupt his family business in New York for the non-fraud of a businessman paying back sophisticated Wall Street banks in full, on time, with interest as agreed. Somehow that's fraud. That's not working. That backfired to the Democrats. Trump is going to beat Biden like a drum on November 5th, 2024. So now Democrats are throwing a legal Hail Mary. They're pretending like they're protecting democracy by just simply removing their leading political opponent from the presidential ballots in key states. They're starting here right now in Colorado. They're in front of a biased judge. As you said, this judge donated to an anti-Trump January 6th PAC. And now this week, she's somehow sitting on presiding over a trial on Trump in January 6th. I don't know how that's not a clear bias. It's reversible error, but nonetheless, that's not going to stop her. They're going to disqualify President Trump in a blue state. With this Democrat judge in Colorado, it will get affirmed by the Colorado Supreme Court. Hopefully, the Supreme Court of the United States puts on their big boy pants and they reverse this unconstitutional nonsense. But what's going to happen is you're going to see states like Michigan point to Colorado as precedent to remove Trump from key swing states like Michigan and many others. This is desperation by the Democrats. Hopefully, the American people wake up and understand that the people who pretend like they are protecting democracy are the most anti-democratic forces in America right now.
No, I agree. It's crazy that they're trying to do this nationwide in multiple states. It does indeed show that they're just terrified of President Trump and what he's going to do in 2024, in my opinion. But as you mentioned, they failed to convict President Trump during an impeachment on the same issue. They're now coming after him without a conviction or a charge of inciting an insurrection or rebelling against the United States. Do they even have legal standing to bring a case like this?
They don't, but that's not going to stop them. The law is very clear. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments were ratified after the Civil War. These are the post-Civil War amendments to free the slaves, to give them due process and equal protection, and to give the freed male slaves voting rights. And as part of this, there is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, a disqualification clause. You saw Confederate sympathizers who engaged in insurrection against the Union during the Civil War starting to win offices, judgeships, state elected offices, even the U.S. House of Representatives. And so in order to chase out these people who are undermining the post-Civil War Reconstruction and the Union, they passed Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to disqualify them from office. But in order to disqualify them, there is a case directly on point from 1869 by Chief Justice Samuel Chase. If you want to disqualify under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, Congress has to pass a federal criminal statute, which Congress did in 1870. There is an insurrection or rebellion statute on the books. It was last updated in 1948. So if you want to disqualify President Trump for insurrection or rebellion, you have to have a federal prosecutor bring federal charges under this specific insurrection or rebellion statute. You have to have a federal jury finds him guilty unanimously with evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. The federal judge has to convict, and that conviction has to be upheld on appeal. If that happens, then you can disqualify President Trump or any other person who participated on January 6th. The reason that has not happened, despite Democrats on the January 6th committee spending tens of millions of dollars in the Biden Justice Department, including Jack Smith spending tens of millions of dollars, is the evidence does not exist. Otherwise, Jack Smith would have charged Trump for insurrection. He's charged Trump with just about everything else except for insurrection under the relevant federal criminal statute that you need to use to disqualify.
Right. I find it funny. It's more of a personal opinion of the Democrats and the plaintiffs in this case that Trump is guilty of insurrection. It's not actually on the books. So I want to talk about, you mentioned that this might be going to the Supreme Court. How do you expect them to rule with the 6-3 majority on the SCOTUS?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, this is an election challenge under Colorado law. I'm a lawyer in Colorado. And as part of that, what happens is you go from this biased judge on the Denver District Court. She is probably going to disqualify Trump after the trial that ends tomorrow, probably sometime around or after Thanksgiving. And then it gets immediately appealed because it's an election challenge directly to the Colorado Supreme Court. Republicans don't win elections out here in Colorado anymore since Democrats legalized weed and all the dirtballs from New York and California moved here, and then we went to all mail ballots. And so you have this left-wing Colorado Supreme Court that's probably going to affirm this biased Democrat judge's disqualification of Trump. And so then the Supreme Court has discretionary review. They don't have to take the case, but I don't know how they can avoid taking the case because this is so much bigger than Donald Trump. These are Republic-ending tactics by the Democrats. So the Supreme Court justices will have to put on their big boy pants. They have to remember they have lifetime tenure and pay protection for a reason. They may have to take a Trump case, and they may actually have to follow the Constitution and the federal criminal statute, which is very clear that you can't have partisan secretaries of state or biased local judges decide who could be on the ballot. It has to be through the constitutional process, including Section 3 of the 14th Amendment and the relevant federal criminal statute on the books since 1870.
Mm-hmm. And I want to talk about some of the testimony that we've seen in the courtroom. You know, we had former DOD Chief of Staff Kash Patel on the stand yesterday. He testified on the security failures at the U.S. Capitol and basically said, yes, President Trump did ask for assistance from the National Guard. However, the plaintiff's expert witness, William Banks, he's a professor, he said that it would all lie on Trump. It does not matter what Mayor Bowser did to request or deny National Guard. It is Trump's responsibility. However, earlier this year, you know, the DC National Guard approved a request from not earlier this year, but in 2021, DC National Guard approved a request from the Metropolitan Police Department and the DC mayor to have National Guard on the ground in DC for Derek Chauvin's trial. It doesn't add up here. Can you explain to us what the rule is, what the law is with bringing in National Guard? Was it Mayor Bowser's responsibility or was it President Trump's?
Well, the president is responsible for the DC National Guard. That power has been delegated to the Secretary of Defense and then redelegated to the Secretary of the Army. But the president can't just call up the National Guard for any reason, and he consults with the other interested parties. Mayor Bowser on January 5th, 2021, the day before January 6th, told President Trump in a letter that she demanded that he not bring up the National Guard. Speaker Pelosi told him that they did not want the National Guard. So just step back and ask this question. Mm-hmm. If President Trump is trying to organize an insurrection, why would he try to call up 10,000, maybe 20,000 National Guard troops who would be on site to put down the insurrection he's supposedly trying to organize? It just doesn't make sense. What happened on January 6th, it was a lawful protest permitted by the National Park Service that devolved into a riot. It got out of control. It devolved into a riot. It was not an insurrection. The protesters who showed up on January 6th, how come if they were coming for an insurrection, how come they didn't come armed, right? And once they got into the Capitol and they got to the Senate floor of the nation's capital, why did they walk through velvet ropes and follow police direction and not burn down the damn place? It was a riot. It was not an insurrection. Mm-hmm. And that's why Jack Smith has not charged President Trump with insurrection, despite tens of millions of dollars in investigative work, because the evidence does not exist.
And I will add, I was there at the rally at the Ellipse on January 6th, and I had many interactions with the people there. they were peaceful people. President Trump told us to march peacefully and patriotically. Of course, it was not inciting violence. And again, I mean, you look at the mostly peaceful protests that Black Lives Matter and the left have done over the years. You can not even consider this a riot when you compare it to 80 to billions of dollars of damage, fires burning down cities. It's just ridiculous. But another thing I want to talk about, it's crazy to me when I look at these attorneys like political thug Jack Smith and this guy Will Rollins, a federal prosecutor who's now running for Congress on his record of persecuting against peaceful American conservatives. I just find myself so lost. How did we get here? How do we have such left-wing lawyers and attorneys coming out of law schools? But I want to get your thoughts on this. This is actually really funny. University of Maryland, Baltimore, the Francis King Carey School of Law, they recently invited Jamie Raskin to come speak on campus. The event hasn't happened yet, but he's going to be speaking about democracy and oversight and January 6th. Do you think that, Black Lives Matter provocateur, election denier, Jamie Raskin should be speaking anywhere near a law school campus? And can you believe that he's a constitutional professor?
Well, I would say on the first part about the weaponization of federal law enforcement, that's pretty blatant. Jack Smith was unanimously reversed by the Supreme Court when he brought a bogus criminal case against former Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell back in 2016. Bob McDonnell was a likely presidential or vice presidential candidate in 2016 until Jack Smith came along as the Democrat Scud missile and took him out. And he didn't care that he got reversed unanimously by the Supreme Court. It was 8-0. It would have been 9-0, but Justice Scalia passed away because the damage was already done. That's what Jack Smith is trying to do with President Trump. He doesn't care if the Supreme Court ultimately reverses what he does. His sole mission right now is to interfere in the election. It's lawfare, it's election interference, because Democrats fear that President Trump is going to beat President Biden like a drum on November 5th, 2024. And you saw that assistant U.S. attorney, who's now a Democrat candidate for office. That's pretty routine in this current Justice Department, because President Obama did such a good job with Eric Holder of stacking the Justice Department with partisan leftists to run these key career posts, whether it's section chiefs at Main Justice, like Jay Bratt, who is now on Jack Smith's team, who's a partisan hack and stands credibly accused of serious misconduct in the Mar-a-Lago case, or it's this assistant U.S. attorney who's now running for office. These are leftists who have taken over the Justice Department. And when President Trump wins back the White House and he's sworn in on January 20th, 2025, President Trump is going to clean house in federal law enforcement and federal intel agencies and get rid of these Democrat operatives, these leftists who have taken over these career posts.
That's incredible. But back to what's going on in law schools. I mean, we've got the next generation of attorneys coming up. They're listening to people like Jamie Raskin talk about democracy and, January 6th and violence and protests. How do we break away from this? How do we combat the left-wing bias in the legal profession, on law school campuses, within the Bar Association, and really take back our country with conservative attorneys who are no longer afraid to stand up and take on cases that might get them sanctioned or disbarred or, consequences of that like?
I think we need to give Democrats a healthy dose of their own medicine, including Democrat lawyers and these law schools. And I think what you need to do is put pressure on these corporations. You put pressure on these Wall Street banks. You put pressure on these major clients who hire these big law firm attorneys, and just say, look, we're not going to hire you as our outside law firm if you're hiring these radicals as your associates. If you're going to hire law students who are cheering on Hamas and the kidnapping, rape, torture, and murder of women, children, babies, the elderly, and disabled, over 1,300 Israelis killed, 31 Americans killed, over 200 hostages. If you have little Hamas-supporting scumbags at your law schools cheering this on, if you're a law firm and hire these people, you're not going to get our business. And that's what needs to happen. We need to give Democrats a very healthy dose of their cancel culture and their other left-wing tactics.
I agree with you, Mr. Davis. You know what? Before we let you go, how can we help your mission at Article 3 Project?
I appreciate that. You can go to article3project.org. You can donate there as we gear up. I'm funding this largely myself, so any support you want to give is greatly appreciated from my team. It's at Article 3 Project, at Article number 3 Project on Getter, Twitter, Truth. Follow us on those social media sites. And if you want to see some really fiery tweets, go to my personal at MRDDMIA, MRDDMIA, which are my initials, and Des Moines, Iowa, where I'm from. I know I sound like I'm from New York, but I'm from Iowa. And thank you for having me on.
That's right. I do follow you on Twitter. You have some great stuff that you're putting out there. I don't know how you do it, tweet after tweet after tweet all day. And you know what? Thank you for your time, Mr. Davis. Thank you for everything.
Thank you.